This is independent author John H. Stephenson IV, and I'm on Amazon. And this is part of a group of satire and stories called Ruth's Groovy Mangoes. And this is the title piece, Ruth's Groovy Mangoes. Chad and Andy slowed their bikes down in front of Ruth Alessi's two-story Victoria home in the deep south on a scorching summer's eve. Chad leaned his bike against a large pecan tree, and Andy laid his down in the grass by his side. The pair of boys prostrated themselves on the ground in front of the old woman's house and began their excitement for the evening. Chad unzipped his red backpack and pulled out a small blue plastic tube. He extended the toy telescope he got out of a box of Captain Crunch cereal and began to survey the situation. "They're all perfectly ripe," Chad said with a salivative smile. "Why do you want a mango, dumbass? I'd rather get me some chocolate. I'd even eat a payday instead of a couple of mangoes," Andy whined. "You're the dumbass, Andy. You keep eating Winnies and a bag of Doritos every day, and you're going to get fat, just like your parents," Chad shot back. "No, I won't, jerk," quipped Andy. "Yeah, you'll see. Mangoes are delicious. Plus, do you got any money? These mangoes are free. They might be a little puny when pitted against grocery store ones, but these are tree-ripe and full of sugar. I can't wait to peel one or two back and gnaw." A line of spittle came out of the corner of Chad's lip and landed in the grass. The two kept silent, especially when they saw the door open and Ruth come out on her front porch to nab her newspaper. She was average height for an old woman, slightly shrunk down from her prime of light height of 5'8". She wore some Lisa Loeb granny glasses that framed the narrowed slits of her begrudging-looking old folk eyes. Ruth Alessi leaned down with a slight feminine grunt and snatched her newspaper up, flicked around quickly, and went back inside her home. The two teens backed up about 10 feet in a reverse crawl, as if training for the Marines. They stood up quietly and slunk back to where their bikes were, careful not to let Ruth or any of her neighbors know they had just been in her yard. They stood on the sidewalk and eyed the mango tree before them as they left for home. Chad put his telescope back in his book bag. "Tomorrow," he said, "I have a plan." "I've been caught up in your crazy plans before, and I don't find them as exciting as you do. And you know my mother always grounds me for longer than what you get, especially if I get in trouble by following your lead." Andy pouted and turned his head away. Chad smacked him backhanded with a halfway balled-up fist on top of Andy's chest playfully. Andy winced. "Ow, jerkface." "You're helping me," Chad announced forcefully. "I know you're already broke this week, and you don't get your allowance till Friday. I'll buy you a king-size Hershey with almonds if you help me fill up my big red book bag with Ruth's Groovy Mangoes." Chad knew that should get Andy to agree to help. Andy's eyes and ears perked up. "I don't want any almonds ruin the amount of chocolate in my candy bar." "I know that," Chad shot back, a bit too loud. He looked at the house. A light came on in one of the downstairs front rooms. "Let's go," Chad said. "Get some good sleep tonight, in case your fat asses run from the cops tomorrow." Andy grinned. He wasn't fat, just a little fluffy, so his fifis wasn't hurt. They pedaled back home together along the common path that shared their most traveled distance home. The next day, after a long discussion of the plan to swipe Ruth's Groovies, Chad and Andy stopped at a 7-Eleven and got a big gulp and an extra cup for them to share as they sat on a park bench to gather their minds on the way to Ruth's. Chad quizzed Andy, and after several corrections and insults hurled Andy's way for never listening, the teens rode to Ruth's house to prepare for the caper. "And I'm going to go over to the left side of the house. I'll motion for you when I want you to walk to the mango tree and start filling my bag up with Ruth's mangoes. Shake the tree pretty good if you can, but remember which mangoes fall on the ground versus which ones are already there. I don't want to get any mouthfuls of rotten mangoes." Chad walked backwards as he went to his post, glaring at Andy to let him know he better not mess anything up and stick with the plan. About 30 seconds after Chad got to his post, he waved at Andy to proceed. Andy took Chad's backpack up and slowly walked over to the mango tree in the center of Old Lady Ruth's yard. He paused when he got to the trunk, put the book bag down, and started shaking Ruth's mango tree with both hands forcefully, pretending he was strangling the neighbor's cat. He glanced up from looking at the claw marks on his arms to make sure he wasn't seen. He looked over at Chad. Chad was waving his hands to get Andy's attention and pointed up at the tree. There was an extra large, perfect-looking mango about 6 inches above Andy's head that didn't get dislodged by the shaking. Andy looked back at Chad, who nodded. Then Andy hopped 5 inches in the air, barely glancing the prime fruit, which stayed in Ruth's mango tree stubbornly. On the way down, Andy's right foot landed on a rotten mango. Both feet slipped out from under him, and he fell to the ground with a hard vocal oof. That did it. Even though it wasn't quite dark outside, Ruth switched her front porch light on to let the boys know they'd been had. She came out of the house too quick for a woman of her age, which startled both boys. Ruth yelled into the soggy Florida air. "Thieves!" she screamed. Behind a column on the front porch, Ruth grabbed a BB gun and pointed it at Andy. "Freeze, chump!" She had the weapon at her side of her hip, like it was a shotgun. Andy started stepping backwards. "Ka-chunk," the BB gun said as it spit out a plastic BB, which sailed over Ruth's yard and hit Andy square on his left kneecap. "Ow!" Andy vocalized. "Are you batshit crazy, old woman? You just can't be shooting people, even if it is only on a plastic BB. You still could poke an eye out." "Yes, I'm crazy, indeed, but I'm old and get to the Fraternal Order of Police, so I do what I want. You're on my property and you are stealing my mangoes." Chad knew that the timing was perfect for his part of the plan. He had chosen the appropriate side of the house for the old woman to be downwind from his position. In his hand was a glass of brown liquid, which Chad furiously stirred up with a spoon. Ruth glanced over to her right and saw Chad. She whipped the BB gun around at him, still aiming from the hip. Chink, clink, chink, chink, clink. Chad's spoon sounded in the glass as Chad stirred up a 16-ounce glass of Ovaltine hard to get all the powder to dissolve. By then, the unique smell of the geriatric beverage had already wafted over to Ruth and made its way firmly up her wrinkled old nose. "Ovaltine! It's been so long! So much better than Sure. A classic," Ruth wailed. "This here is a vintage canister from the 90s. You can look at the expiration date," Chad told her, extra enthused to feed Ruth's excitement. "Extra chalky vintage Ovaltine. The 90s were the best years for that varietal." Ruth dropped her BB gun and held out both her fragile hands towards Chad, who placed the canister in them gently. She glanced over at Andy, who was looking at the goofy scene underneath Ruth's groovy mango tree. Andy slowly approached the teen and old woman, surprised Chad's plan had actually worked. "I got something else for you, ma'am," Chad said as he reached behind his back and pulled out a large puffy bag. He handed it to Ruth, who quickly looked inside. "Women's petite depends. Why, how did you know my size?" Ruth asked. "We've been rummaging through your trash, ma'am," Chad admitted. "Why, this is an extra large pack. How can you boys afford this?" Ruth wondered. "We saw a coroner loading up a dead body at the Blaze of Glory Whole Care nursing home facility, and normally a couple days after that, some prime items of the individual that passed will be in the nursing home dumpster." "Well, Say, these are old-style Depends from before 2010. They were made a lot better back then. They absorb more and are extra comfortable." Ruth beamed at her two new friends. "Do you mind if we have some of your groovy mangoes, Ruth?" Chad asked. He had told Andy not to say a thing and let him do all the talking. Andy stood there, dumbfounded Chad's goofy plan had actually worked, still looking stupid. Ruth stared at the can of Ovaltine in her hands and the bag of diapers at her feet. "Sure, son. I don't really eat many anyway. Mostly I like to watch Toastie's raccoons come and nibble on them. Want to see some pictures of raccoons? I got 3 volumes on the coffee table in the family room for Discord." "No, thank you," Chad said politely, as he turned away from Ruth to collect his fruit. Mission complete. "Say, boys," Ruth said a little bit too desperately, wanting friends. "I look at the obituaries every day. I can help you dumpster dive at the Blaze nursing home." "Bet," said Chad. "Come on, Andy. Let's go get you that Hershey's." "But I don't gamble anymore," yelled Ruth, as the boys hopped on their bikes to pedal off. "Come back tomorrow, kids. I'll make you both some Ovaltine. I've even got some hard candy in a cut glass dish on the living room coffee table." The boys pedaled off silently, a book bag full of mangoes, never to see the old woman again until next fruiting season. Chad was a little twisted for his age and already religiously read the obits. The two friends pedaled and swerved playfully in the streets, Andy's face stained with chocolate, and a book bag full of mangoes for Chad to make a couple of weeks' worth of delicious mango and banana smoothies. I like that one.